Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Green Flag. I'm your host, Lucas Wacker, and with me, as always, we have Kyle Cushman, bringing you the latest in the world of motorsports. And there was a lot to talk about over this past weekend, as we had the three main series back in action with the Cup Series, F1 finally back, and IndyCar with its second race of the season, along with the Xfinity Series as well. So we're here to break it down for all of you guys, and I think we should just kind of jump right into it.
We got a lot here.
With the big one, I guess you can say, one of the crown jewels, as we mentioned in our Q&A section this past week, the crown jewel for NASCAR, the Brickyard 400. And obviously going into the weekend, there was some major news that broke on Friday afternoon as Jimmie Johnson, 7-time Cup Series champion, tested positive for COVID-19 and had to miss the race this weekend. His first race ever missed in his Cup Series career, breaking a 600 and I believe 600 and I have it here.
Is it
663 consecutive start streak, and incredible total. And obviously, you would never want that in his final season, especially. And you kind of want him to go his whole career without missing a race. And unfortunately for Jimmy, his wife got the virus and then passed it on to him. So. He missed this week's action at the Brickyard, his final Brickyard 400, it seems, unfortunately. And Justin Allgaier stepped into that 48 car. Didn't have the greatest run, unfortunately, for him, but we'll get into that a little bit later. But that's some huge playoff implications for that 48 car and Jimmie Johnson, because if you miss a race and you're not in that car, you don't get the points. Even though Allgaier is running that car, that just goes to the owner points. Jimmie Johnson has to be in that car to earn points. And he could be looking at maybe missing the playoffs for 2 consecutive years now, which would be heartbreaking. He had such a great start to the season here. And obviously unforeseen circumstances is going to prevent him from maybe running in this next weekend at Kentucky, and who knows beyond that. So he has to have 2 negative tests within 24 hours of the virus to be able to come back. It's just NASCAR's policy. It's the right thing to do. With 14-day quarantine, though, that you can kind of put your timeline around then, I'd say. It's going to be a tough road to get those points back for Jimmie Johnson. Wouldn't you say, Kyle?
Yeah, the only silver lining to it is that Johnson had a much better start to the year than last year, so he did have a bit of a points buffer to that playoff cutoff line. I believe going into this weekend, he was in 12th in points, was right around 11th, so he did have a bit of a gap. And so after this first weekend not being in the car, he is still in a playoff position, which is huge. But the thing for Jimmie Johnson is once he does get back, he needs to find his form quickly, because he won't have this points buffer like he previously had, where you can, go through a couple races of a bit of a slump and still have that buffer and get back in the swing of things. He's got to come back with basically on the ground running to be in this playoff conversation, because unlike years past, where the playoff bubble has kind of been 1 or 2 different guys, it's shaping up this year to be a much, much more compact and closer group battling for that 16th playoff position.
Yeah, he's got no room for error, that's for sure, when he comes back. He can't have a DNF or anything like that, or he has to have solid, at least top 15 runs and get some stage points on a regular basis. I mean, we're just speculating here, but I mean, if he misses maybe 1 or 2 more regular season races, obviously the All-Star break in there kind of helps him, even though it's a midweek race. It does give him that added timeline of returning. So if he misses two races, he's definitely going to fall outside of the top 16 in points. But with the way that 48 car was running, I wouldn't put it past him to just squeak in, but it's going to be down to the wire for Jimmie Johnson in his final year to make the playoffs. So obviously some tough news there to start the weekend. Me and Kyle texted back and forth there for a little bit when the news broke. We were both in shock because
I was getting my first haircut in a long time when that news broke. I pull up my phone and I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. The one time that there's like genuine sports news out of this whole break, and it's while I'm getting my haircut. But yeah, it was definitely shocking. But it's going to make this playoff race even more fascinating, because the way things were trending, it looked like Johnson was going to be fairly comfortable in that bubble, and now he's right back to the same situation he was last year.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough road for that 48 car, and hopefully the crew chief Cliff Daniels has that car tuned up for Jimmy when he comes back, and they just try and, I mean, obviously this past weekend, their goal was to try and stay in the top 12 in owner points because then you get that starting position. But at Indy, it didn't quite go to plan, and they dropped outside of that top 12 in the owner points as well. So it's going to be tough for the 48 car because he has that now 13th to 24th starting spot. So it's a big detriment in terms of getting those stage points in the first stage. So obviously going to be a tough road for the 48, like we said, and hopefully Jimmy's back sooner rather than later. We all want to see Jimmy Johnson in his final season in the playoffs. So I guess we can kind of move on to the actual race itself with the Brickyard 400. Mike Tirico and Dale Jarrett at the track for NBC, which was
That was
obviously
cool.
great to see on the Pagoda. It's a great atmosphere there. I mean, just a great view. You just see the whole front straightaway. Obviously, no fans once again, but obviously great to have someone like Mike Tirico on the broadcast call, just adding that little bit of element of NFL football.
He's
Or
fantastic. He's so
he's
good.
just so good. He's so versatile. So just thought I'd give him a quick shout out because it was great to
Absolutely.
see.
Hey, I'm always good for the Mike Tirico shout outs.
Yeah, we've got NBC on the call this week for the first time this season. And the guys that are usually in the booth with Rick Allen, Steve Letarte, Jeff Burton, and Dale Earnhardt Jr. were actually at Charlotte Motor Speedway calling the race, which was kind of interesting because obviously Fox has their own studio space in Charlotte, so they were able to make it look and feel more natural. But NBC doesn't have that luxury, and they had to call the race from Charlotte, which I can imagine was probably pretty difficult for the guys just looking into a monitor instead of having like a huge screen where Fox had. So just probably a bit of a complicated broadcast for the guys. You can kind of get that sense a little bit throughout the race that they were, trying to get a grasp on what was happening all around the track. But for everything that's going on, I'd say that they did a pretty good job, and a nice time to have them back in the sport, especially for the Brickyard. So just give them a quick shout out, obviously. And then it wouldn't be a NASCAR weekend without a delay, 55-minute lightning delay to start this race, just prolong it even more. Just, scheduled tweet, as Barstool president would like to say. So it's kind of crazy to think that it's basically been affected every single week since they've come back. But we got the race underway, and early on we had Blaney and Kyle Busch making a little bit of contact, obviously, from the previous week at Pocono. They had those two ruffled some feathers. Love tap. No harm, no foul. Rubbins racing, as they like to say. And Kyle Busch was the aggressor on this one, probably just showing a little bit of displeasure towards last week's incident. But Kyle would come out the better in terms of the result by the end of the day compared to Blaney. So Truex also had a engine problem basically right out of the gate. I thought maybe, we said in last week you should stay away from the 19 car. Proved to be right for your fantasy lineup. So a rough day if you're
pretty
a fan
solid
of Martin
last week. I gotta say,
I feel pretty
solid.
happy with how he performed on that. I felt really accomplished. So
yeah,
hopefully you guys will listen to the fantasy preview we have later on in the show, because I think it's a pretty good one too. So Truex has the engine issues early, puts him back in the pack, which results in the pileup on pit road. What a crazy incident that was. I mean, Indy has a very narrow pit road, but I mean, it's kind of rare to see that, the cup level making those kind of mistakes. And it was just an accordion effect near about mid-20s, and Truex was back there. He got collected in it. Justin Allgaier in his first cup start since, I think it was, 2016? Yeah.
Phoenix Racing.
Yeah, in that 51 car.
Yeah.
It's crazy to think it's been that long since he was in the Cup Series, but a rough day for that 48 car. Allgaier had nowhere to go. He was back in the pack.
Which
Jimmy
is unfortunate.
Johnson actually drew the fourth starting position for this race, but they had to start at the back because of the driver switch. So a rough start there for Justin Allgaier, and they tried to get that thing going, but it didn't.
While they were actually racing, like he started way at the back, and he'd made his way up into the top 30 after the just handful of laps that they had done. So it looked like they had speed, and just a fluky, unfortunate situation. And the situation happened because of one of my biggest pet peeves is people trying to gain a 10th on pit road, but taking 25% or even more danger in doing so, running right up behind the guy in front of you. If anybody checks up, your race is basically done. So I just don't get why they do it, especially at tracks like the Brickyard, where it's such a narrow pit road and you don't have any room to go. And sure enough, we saw it last year a little bit. We saw it this year even more so. And yeah, I just don't get that risk versus reward, especially that early in the race.
Yeah, I totally agree. It was the competition caution. It's just early on in the race. Just
Just
getting your feet wet,
relax,
kind of. Yeah,
relax.
it's obviously going to have the most cars on pit road at that time because there's no real lap cars because Indy's such a big track. So
Yeah,
basically, the whole field was on pit road at that time. And if I'm picking a stall, I'm not picking at the beginning of pit road. I'm going as far down as I can for that selection because you're just probably likely in the least amount of danger there. So it was but that depends on your previous week's result now. It doesn't matter on where you qualify. It's where you finish the previous week.
right.
So it's the people that, are struggling maybe that are getting those bad pit selections there at the back. I think probably the better cars probably picked near the end of pit road because they knew that that was a possibility of happening. And unfortunately for Ryan Blaney and his pit crew member, he got collected in the incident because Brennan Poole and Justin Ogler are trying to swerve to avoid, but there's nowhere really to go. It's just kind of an instant reaction. You just kind of you see an open spot and you go for it. But I mean, it's kind of risk versus reward, and it was very risky what they did. And yeah, the crew member ended up getting his knee, fractured knee. They revealed, I think, on the Monday after he had gone to the hospital. He got it jammed in between the car. He limped away, trying to push himself along the
Absolute
ground.
beast. Like, oh
Yeah,
my
what a
goodness.
trooper. I mean, he knew he was hurt right away and smiles and everything, gave a big thumbs up to the crew and everything afterwards. So obviously a very scary incident. You never want to see that because the guys on pit road, they're heroes. They are out there. It's no joke what they do. It's a full team effort what they do, carrying 80 something pound tires around the car and
Like they're
jacking
nothing.
the
Yeah.
yeah, fuel in the car, and all under about 13 seconds, by the way. So if you can get that kind of road service anywhere in the world, it's pretty impressive. So obviously a big disappointment there to lose a crew member for Blaney, and hopefully he'll come back by the end of this season. But it's obviously just not what you want to see. It's a scary
Yeah.
looking incident from any angle, and hopefully he'll recover soon. So obviously some big names kind of caught up in that. Some bubble drivers, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. kind of trying to work his way into the bubble race. He got knocked out really early. Corey LaJoy in the Trump car got knocked out. Wasn't too sad to see that thing kind of banged up, but it
Uh,
is what it is. Christopher Bell sustained some damage there, but it didn't seem to hamper his car too much. He ended up coming back stronger. Seems like that Pocono speed translated into a good Indy run early on in the race.
Said it
Kind of
last
got
week.
shuffled.
Levine Family Racing. They're a bit of a second half racing team, and it's looking like that's the same thing.
Yeah, seems to be the case this time, and all those drivers were affected early. Many more had some damage there. So red flag was deployed, I think, there for about 11 minutes. They're trying to get everybody sorted out and getting the
Yeah.
crew member into the ambulance. So just a bit of a brief delay there in the race, and we move on. And William Byron takes stage one after some strategy calls. Big playoff points there for the 24 team and check out and make that playoff point and the 10 additional points for that bubble race because Byron's around that area. He's not too safe, but he's not in too much danger either, I'd say. So he's kind of like around an Eric Jones kind of range there, just in that 13th to 16th range on a weekly basis in terms of points. So good start to William Byron's day. Unfortunately for him, it wouldn't turn out that way, as this big storyline of the day would be tires going down on multiple occasions and some very violent hits for these drivers, and they walked away.
Unexpectedly, too.
Yeah, it reminded me, I
No
think it
warning.
was I think the 2008 Indy race where they
Yeah.
pitted like
When,
on every 20 laps or something for
yeah.
tires because they just couldn't get,
Yeah.
after 5 laps the tires were shot, and that's even worse than we see on the most
And
abrasive
yeah, and it
racetracks.
wasn't even necessarily like that this weekend. It was like, yeah, there was regular tire degradation, but it was almost like at random times just during the run, all of a sudden one tire would just go, and it would be completely unbeknownst to anybody. There'd be no signs. We saw
Yeah.
it like I think the best example of it is William Byron. He goes down pits, takes 2 tires, and a quarter of a lap later, his left front blows up. Like the
Yeah.
odds of that happening are so minuscule, and yeah, we saw it impact the race the entire time, and yeah, definitely the ending, but. Yeah, just a wild thing because all of a sudden it became the theme of the day. Like, okay, things are running good now, but in the blink of an eye, things can change quickly.
Definitely, and that Byron play was to get track position because it's so difficult to pass at Indy, especially with this package. Just it's just difficult to get those runs, and restarts are so valuable. And Byron ended up getting away there. And on that restart there, he would get a flat tire later on in the race, like Kyle mentioned, blowing the left front and sending that car into the wall. I think he finished in the 20s somewhere. So he
Yeah.
got those 10 points, but then that's about as good of his day as it got. So Eric Jones, also a big name that kind of got into that had a huge impact. I mean, I don't know how these drivers walk away. Like the safety measures in NASCAR need to
It's
be
incredible.
praised after this weekend
The hits
because
that they had this week, like, oh my goodness. That
yeah,
show those clips and show the guys getting out and basically looking completely okay. Maybe like a
yeah,
little bit gingerly, but like even then, the hits that they were taking, you would expect them to get out and basically be sitting down because the wind is just completely taken out from them. But yeah, the safety of these cars are absolutely incredible. And when you're blowing tires going in at that angle, I sure hope they are, because yeah, I wouldn't want to do so.
yeah. And Eric Jones was another name we said stay away from in your fantasy lineup. That kind of proved to be right again. Alex Bowman had a very similar hit to Eric Jones. We told you to stay away from him as well. It seemed to
Maybe we're
work
just
out. I
bad
felt
luck.
I felt bad that we were kind of getting it right, but at the same time, it was like, okay,
Yeah.
maybe we're actually smarter than we think we are. But it's obviously a rough day for those guys, and especially for Jones and Byron and Ryan Newman had a
Yeah.
right front go down too. So
I swung and
guys
missed on
trying to get
Newman.
points. Yeah, that's true. And it's just a kind of a rough day there for those guys, and especially in that bubble race. So it gave the opportunity for some other guys to try and capitalize and get some points. And I think one of those guys was Austin Dillon, got a lot of stage points throughout the day with pit strategy. His staying out strategy to get stage points there worked out brilliantly for that 3 team. And he didn't quite get the finish he ultimately deserved, I think, but he got some stage points, and I think he got 33 points out of the day. So
Yep.
a very good day for that three car, and trying to get himself into contention there and trying to become an equal with Tyler Reddick after he's kind of shocked the sport by storm in that 8 car. So
Jumped
good to
up
see
into a
that.
playoff spot after that race, up into the 16th spot.
Yeah, Jones will fall out, I think, right?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, after the poor finish
Just
there.
barely,
So
6-point difference there.
yeah, it's going to be a tight race down to the wire
Yeah.
there. It's going to be
Oh
really, really
yeah, it
close,
is.
especially if someone like Matt Kenseth goes in there and kind
Gets a
of wins a
win.
race.
Yep.
Maybe we'll get to him a little bit later. Probably the biggest shock of the day. Maybe not the biggest shock, but the most welcome surprise, I guess you could
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
It was great
Yeah.
to see that
Yeah.
42. Mr. Cushman got that one right. I'll give him credit on that one. Credit
Had to
goes where
brag
credit.
about that one a bit on Twitter, but
Yeah.
yeah, we'll continue on with the story of this race, though.
Yeah, we've got Ryan Blaney's day got from bad to worse. Just had a rough day for that 12 car, another car that we told you to stay away from. So it was kind of scary how real it was becoming, and he just got loose underneath his teammate Brad Keselowski, and didn't quite he couldn't control that thing. Keselowski got away clean, but Blaney did not, and he got, I think, in the 30s as well for a finish. It's a rough day for that 12 team after having pretty good runs consecutively there. So Kevin Harvick would win stage 2. That would be it would be a theme going on from, I think, probably from stage 2 on. You had Hamlin and Harvick for the 3rd consecutive race in a row going at it for the win. Hamlin obviously would not get the best outcome, but we'll get to that. Some epic restarts and some great passes for the lead, because the 2 cars and the lead would stall out. The 3rd place car would have this massive run coming out of turn 2, and Harvick and Hamlin have both had these opportunities throughout the race, making it 3 wide, almost going to the pass on the grass, I might say. It was very, very close, and that 3rd place car most likely got the lead. Harvick was able to hold him off on the outside a couple of times, but that's where you saw the most passing was on restarts. Thankfully, there was at least a bit of action there, and it kind of got pretty stale there in the 3rd stage there, because you just couldn't pass. They were just Harvick, Hamlin, and Kenseth were separated by about 5/10 each, and they just couldn't make any ground on each other because it's a single groove racetrack. You can't go high to make time. It's you just got to try and be as accurate as possible. It's more about technique than anything. So
Yeah.
it was kind of stale there for a bit, but then with 7 laps to go, we move on. Denny Hamlin in the lead
Out
of
of
this race,
nowhere.
going for his first Brickyard 400. I'd say it's between Harvick and Hamlin who had the best car of the day, but track position was king. Hamlin had it late in the going, and he blows a right front tire hard going into turn one. Like, it was a violent impact, flames roaring out of that car. It was pretty scary to see. I mean, Gibbs had a very rough day in terms of Jones, Truex, and Hamlin all having issues. Kyle Busch finishes sixth, but not the greatest day for Joe Gibbs Racing, especially at a track that they historically
Expensive
run
day.
really well at. Yeah, very expensive weekend, I'd say, in both series,
Right,
in the
right.
Xfinity Series too. So it's if you're a Gibbs fan this weekend, it wasn't the greatest. So obviously heartbreaking for Hamlin. I cheered, I'm not going to lie, because I did not want to see that 11 car winning his fifth race of the season already. I'd rather see somebody else win. But unfortunately, that wouldn't even be the case anyways. So Hamlin would get out of the car. You'll have to wait another year to kiss the bricks. I mean, there's not really much. Do you want to add anything to that? I mean, it's just
It just
really
kind of goes with the
tough to see.
theme that we've kind of talked about these last couple of weeks, where Hamlin's either finished essentially first
Yep,
or Rex and is at the back. And this week we got both. And
that's true. Yeah,
it's just wild because you look at the standings and he's still only in fifth, which is crazy to me because he's been, if not the most dominant, the second dominant car. It's been Harvick and Hamlin all year long. And because of these unfortunate circumstances and different whatever the entire season, he's still only back in fifth, which is crazy because Brad Keselowski is ahead of him by like 20 points, which,
he
yeah,
doesn't get many stage points. I've noticed, though. He doesn't get like
that's
the
true.
top.
That's
I think
true.
that's the difference. But like, he gets really, really good finishes. Like, he comes out of nowhere in the
Yeah.
second half of the race that I've noticed. So
But
yeah,
the standings definitely don't do him justice the same way that Kevin Harvick does, having a pretty decent gap from
yeah,
first to second
very,
place in the
very
regular
good.
season standings. But
He's got that locked
uh,
up, I'd say.
oh yeah, it's looking so. He's got an 85-point gap to Chase Elliott here, and it seems like the guys behind him really kind of switch around every week, and it's kind of Hamlin that's the only one that challenges. But then he also doesn't really get stage points, as you mentioned. So, but yeah, it's looking like these two are going to be the cream of the crop this season, and just another unfortunate way to end a race for Denny Hamlin. As much as you
He
want to
could
see,
have 6 wins right now.
as much as you
7,
want to see,
6, yeah,
as much
6,
as you want
yeah.
to see different people win races, just the way that he crashed out and just how much he wants to win this specific race, I felt really bad for him. And I'm hoping that his luck turns around a bit in terms of some of these wrecks and finishes and whatnot, because I want to see him get up there, maybe have a bit of a battle for the regular season title as well, because at the rate it's going, Harvick's kind of driving away with it.
Yeah, it's just that 4 team's so consistent. I think that's probably what's
Yeah,
going to be
that's the
the
key point,
impact,
because
because
nobody can make a decent chunk out of the gap because the 4 team is so consistent. Because you look at some of the other guys around there, you look at Elliott, Keselowski, Blaney, even Hamlin himself, and they've all had different issues throughout the season. And Harvick's just been consistent, race in, race out, and that's why he has this gap.
yeah, it's been a pretty successful team if you're a fan of Kevin Harvick. So moving on to a green-white checkered finish. Kevin Harvick and Matt Kenseth on the front row. Harvick takes off. That car was just so fast. No chance for anybody to really
Yeah,
pass him.
when the 3 cars around him are all SHR, I wasn't expecting much of a push to get Kenseth to the lead there, but
Yeah, unfortunate for Kenseth there. I was really rooting for him
yeah,
there. I
yeah,
wanted to see him win so bad.
yeah.
But Kevin
Yeah,
Harvick
McDonald's car.
never looked back, and he gets the win at Indianapolis, his second consecutive Brickyard 400 and third in his career, and his fourth win of the season. So ties Hamlin for the most in the series. These two just seem to be going back and forth with wins right now. It's pretty
Running
incredible to see the
1-2 as well.
dominance.
It's
Yeah,
been very impressive these last few weeks,
yeah.
especially given all the circumstances, the no practice, everything. These 2 cars have nailed their setups week in, week out, and it's just been a class of their own, because the rest of the field is dealing with the same stuff, the same different difficulties and whatnot, and just haven't been in the same universe as those 2.
Yeah, Rodney Childers and Chris Gapehart have obviously done their homework, and they know what to put in those cars to make their drivers very comfortable and happy on race day. And the results are showing it. Unfortunately for Hamlin, didn't quite get the finish he ultimately deserved. It was a top 2 finish, 100% for Hamlin from based on
Yep.
what he was running. So
Oh, yeah.
huge win for Harvick there. Just trying to extend his lead in the regular season points. If you used him in your fantasy lineup, it was a big payday, 56 points out of
Yes, it
a possible
was.
60. Great day for Harvick on that front as well. And just want to point out some notable finishers here. Matt Kenseth, second place
Yes,
at the
sir.
Brickyard. Awesome finish for that 42 car. His best finish since returning to the Cup Series this season. Kyle's feeling pretty good about
Oh,
himself
I'm
after
feeling
that one.
good about that one, I gotta say.
And then Eric Almirola continues his strong run of form, finishes third.
Is that
Kind of
five
fell back
straight?
mid. I think
Five
so.
straight
Yeah,
top fives?
it's his
Woohoo!
career best streak. It's that 10 car is rolling right now. SHR seems to be getting some better equipment underneath the rest of the drivers. Harvick obviously getting the wins, but the other cars are seeming to get those solid finishes as well. So a huge couple of past 5 races for that 10 team with a multitude of different types of racetracks. So they're showing speed on any kind of layout, and that's good to see for the 10 team. And Cole Custer gets his top 5 finish that we've all been waiting for this season, and he finishes 5th. Great to see from the rookie, highest finishing rookie of the race, obviously. So good to see him get a strong run. Michael McDowell comes home 7th. Front Row Motorsports. What a season they are having with these surprise top 10 runs. John Hunter Nemechek and Michael McDowell are putting some strong performances together. Maybe not on such a consistent basis, but they're getting these shock top 10s at some of the big races. And for a Brickyard, that's a huge win, I say, for a team like
Yeah.
that. That's probably as best as you can hope for, especially with some of the big guys having some issues throughout the day. Chase Elliott was in contention there, but then had some weird pit strategy call there.
Yeah.
So he finished in the teens because he just couldn't pass. So tough day for the 9 team. And then Bubba Wallace, 9th place. Good to see for that 43 car getting some regular top 15 runs, it seems. They are in position. They're not making too many mistakes. They're bringing some solid pieces to the track. If he
Jumped
got a
up into
better
the top 20 in the point standings.
yeah,
Up into
that's a
19th after that,
huge
after the
change.
issues to Stenhouse and Busher.
Yeah, huge change in performance from last season to this year. And I think Bubba Wallace has obviously got a fire lit underneath him from everything that's going on. He's got a lot of momentum. He's got the support of the world really behind him in terms of the field, and a lot of big names in the professional sports industry and the media industry. So he's out there to prove everybody that 43 car is better than what it seemed in the past. And it's great to see from Bubba Wallace. And I just want to give a shout out to Ross Chastain and that 77
Yeah.
car, Spire Motorsports, 17th place. Pretty good finish for that 77 car when they're usually about a 30th place car, 35th place car in most weeks. So good to see Ross Chastain just bringing that car home in one piece and capitalizing again on other people's mistakes. It's just something that these kind of slower cars just have to do. And I think they've done a pretty good job of it, especially with the no practice. I think they've taken a more conservative approach, and they're just letting the race kind of come to them instead of trying to, be the stupid person that stays out on old tires on a late restart. You know what I mean? So they're getting these good finishes, and so a great weekend for those teams. And I think that kind of wraps up the Brickyard 400. And I guess we could kind of move into Cush's 3 a little bit earlier this week,
Yeah.
Kyle. So with the Brickyard. So take it away.
Yeah, well, the most impressive ones we've kind of already covered a bit, just because it's the notable ones. Obviously, Matt Kenseth being the big one, by far his best performance since coming back this season, and that's the kind of result that team needed to show that they still have the speed that they had when they had Kyle Larson in that car, race-winning potential, and I'm sure that's a big confidence boost to that entire team. So that's number one. That was the obvious one. Number 2, Cole Custer, his biggest points haul of the season, of his career to this point, with 32 points, up in the top 8 in terms of points hauls from the day. And just, again, that's a guy that just needs that constant confidence boost, the positive momentum. And that's definitely something big that they can pull from this week and heading into a track that Cole Custer has been pretty solid at in Kentucky Speedway next week. And finally, It's Michael McDowell's second top 10 of the season, tying his career best. And come on, a 7th place finish for Front Row Motorsports out of nowhere. That's just awesome to see. And that team has taken such a massive step up from being essentially the gap between the midfield and the true back markers to being genuine midfield contenders up in the top 23 in points for both of their cars, when last year all 3 cars were 28, 29, and 30th, if my memory serves correct. But I think this week the bigger deal is the 3 duds, and 2 of them were easy. I had a bit of a struggle finding the third one, just because I'm going more for the actual performance rather than just bad luck. So ignore some of the guys that wrecked out early. I'm not talking about Truex. I'm not talking about Stenhouse, any of those guys. But for me, number 1 is Clint Bowyer. SHR had some excellent speed this time out, as you can see by some of the points finishes. 3 cars in the top 5. Cole Custer getting his best performance of the season. All of his teammates were up in the top 8 in terms of points from this weekend. Clint Bowyer was down, tied for 16th. And he did pick up a couple of 10th place finishes in the stages, but was never a factor all day, ended up finishing outside the top 15. And when somebody you're battling for the playoff bubble and Jimmy Johnson is missing a race, you need to capitalize on that. And Clint Bowyer just really didn't do that, given the equipment that the rest of his teammates had. So for me, Clint Bowyer's number 1. Number 2, Alex Bowman. He did wreck out, but even before that, he did not show much speed at all. Even trying to short pit one of the stages and ended up going a lap down. So Bowman, his struggles continue at this track, and for me, he's one of the duds. And now the third one, you might be a little bit surprised at first. It's Kurt Busch. Okay, so this one is a bit off the wall, but for me, it's 2 things. It's where he started and what his teammate was able to do. He started out front on the front row and just continued to drop back as the race went on. Obviously had some issues on pit road that ended up putting him further back and wasn't able to recover from that much, but finished outside the top 5 after having such a good starting position at a track where track position is key. Didn't get a massive points haul in terms of the stage points, and when his teammate was able to come from way back in the field all the way through to second place, for me, Kurt Busch gets that, even though he did end up having a decent day, finishing 13th and getting 27 points. But those are Cush's 3s for this weekend. And with that, I think we can transition into the upcoming race.
So we're at Kentucky Speedway this week, and back to another 1.5 mile track. Obviously going to be, it's been a hit or miss race in previous years. Last year's finish was phenomenal between the Busch brothers, probably the best finish of the season last year. Hopefully we get more of the same this weekend, but that's to be determined. So moving on, I guess, to a fantasy preview, I guess you could say, for this week. I've got Kyle Busch in my lineup this week.
He needs 100%. To be in everybody's lineup.
He has an average finish of 4.67. The guy is unstoppable here at Kentucky. Only has 2 wins with that average finish, but gets top 5s consistently. His lowest finish is 12th, and I think that was back in 2012.
That's crazy.
He is the inaugural winner of this race in the Cup Series. He has 621 laps led, most of any driver in the Cup Series. So if you have Kyle Busch at any usage, you are putting him in your lineup this week, with the schedule to be determined for the rest of the regular season. I think that comes out maybe later this week, but depending on what you see from that. But if you have any usage of Kyle Busch, this is a strong track to use one on, for sure. And then second, I've got Eric Jones. I think this guy is going to be really, really strong this week after obviously a rough weekend at Indy. I expect that 20 car to be out there for some stage points, and probably going to have the speed to get some solid finishes. He has an average finish of 5.33 in his 3 career races, 3 top 10s, and his lowest finish of 7th. So I think it's a pretty good bet to see that 20 car in the solid top 10 position all weekend long. And then I'm going Joe Gibbs heavy this weekend. I've got Martin Truex Jr. also in my lineup. An average finish of 11.11. Maybe not the greatest on average, but he has 2 wins. One with Furniture Row, and then obviously one with I think, wait, were they both Furniture Row? They might have been, right?
Yes, because
they were
last
both
year
with
was
Furniture Row. Yeah. And then 373 laps led, looking for a bounce back weekend, obviously, for Gibbs. I think that Kentucky completed the place. They've run historically really, really well there. So maybe not the mile and a half speed has been there this season, but I'm going based off pre-track history. So I've got Brad Keselowski, the winningest driver at Kentucky in the Cup Series, an average finish of 12.33. He's had some rough results there lately, getting some wrecks. Either he wins or he wrecks, basically, is essentially what happens at Kentucky. And none of them are usually by his own fault, but he's got 3 wins, most all time, 524 laps led. Some pretty good stats there to back up with Brad Keselowski, and I think this is a good place to use him. I think Joey Logano could also be in there if you wanted to. He's historically run pretty well there. He was in contention there late last year before the final caution there. So I think if you want to maybe – you can probably interchange those two if you wanted to, similar to what happened at the Brickyard, I guess. I think those two are pretty equal. I wouldn't probably put Blaney in this week, but we'll get to my stay away from. And then I've got – Kurt Busch as my 5th driver this week. He's the defending race winner. Even though he was in your duds this past week, I think he could be a real stud this week. So he's got an average finish of 10.78. I'm just kind of going off of last year's speed. And I think Kurt Busch is usually a pretty solid bet for a top 10 finish at Kentucky. So I think that's my top 5. And then my garage is going to be Matt Kenseth. I think he's had such a great historical record at this track. He's got 1 win, even though that was back in 2013 in Joe Gibbs Racing Equipment. He has an average finish of 8.38, which is pretty phenomenal. It's the 3rd best amongst active drivers there. And after a huge weekend at Indy and at some solid runs at Pocono 2 weeks ago, I'd say that the 42 car is really going to be strong this week. He's going to have to come from the back once again because of where the point situation is, but I'd imagine Matt Kenseth to be up there in contention for a top 5, maybe even a win this week, considering if they get enough speed out of that 42 car, because Larson statistically run pretty well there too. So I can imagine that they have a pretty decent setup there for Kentucky. So those are my 6 drivers going into the weekend. Obviously that's to be determined if that can change, because Jimmy Johnson was in my lineup last week, but then I had to switch him and put Kurt Busch in. So we'll see if anybody tests positive for COVID this week, and we'll have to make the changes necessary. But my stay away from this week, Denny Hamlin. I'm saying you have to stay away from the 11 car this week. I know that might sound a little bit crazy considering his speed, but I think this could be a dud race for the 11 car. He hasn't run statistically well here in the past, and I think his 3 teammates are better than him here. I don't know if I'd want to waste a Hamlin usage since they seem to be so valuable. I'd rather take pretty much a guaranteed win at some of his other tracks, considering the speed that they've had, than a mediocre day. So I'd stay away from the 11 car this week. Also, Chase Elliott. This is my 2nd week in a row saying you stay away from Chase Elliott. I just haven't seen the speed from that 9 car necessarily at Kentucky in the previous years. So I think that there's more valuable tracks for him coming up, especially at somewhere like Texas or Kansas. I say he's going to be a more valuable usage at those kinds of tracks. I think he's less suited for the newly paved tracks, or the more flat tracks, I'd say. So I stay away from Chase Elliott. William Byron is another one this week I'd stay away from. I just have a funny feeling that the 24 car may not have the best finish this week. His numbers don't really back up any evidence to show otherwise. So I'd stay away from that 24 car. Then Eric Almirola. I know he's been on such a great run, a great stretch these past 5 races, but I stay away from the 10 car. He's not really run well here. He has the 20th best average finish out of any driver. So I'd say Eric Almirola is one to stay away from this weekend. So those are my 4 stay away froms, and then my 6 lineup. So do you have any comparables there, Kyle, or are you thinking?
Yeah, we're in agreement a fair bit this week, both in terms of who we've got in our lineup and to stay away from. Eric Almirola is definitely one that I'm staying away from. He has not had any success at this track, and even though he's got the 5 straight top 5s, I just can't see that streak continuing into this weekend. Another one that I'm staying away from, even though you mentioned his name earlier, I just can't be convinced to put Joey Logano in my lineups until I see that actual race result. I feel like that's too valuable of a usage to waste. And given his recent form and how lackluster that team has really been since the return as a whole. I got to wait to see at least one really strong result where he's up contending for the win before I'm convinced to put him in the lineup. But we actually only have one difference in the actual lineup. I think that this is going to be very team heavy this weekend. Joe Gibbs, I think, is going to be the class of the field. I definitely hold off on Hamlin, though, as well. I think that he's a usage better served later on, and I think that you can go with the other 3 Gibbs cars this weekend and still get some pretty good results. I also think Ganassi is going to be really good because both of their drivers have been excellent at this track in the past. And for Kurt Busch, it's not just been the one win. He also has another top 5 and 3 top 10s on top of that at this track, and on top of Kenseth, who as well has been very good. So I'm definitely in agreement on those 5. One guy that I keep my eye on, though, last year at this track, Roush Fenway had a pretty solid run with Ryan Newman, and right behind him in the running order in 10th place was Chris Buescher, who did so in JTG Doherty equipment. He's now in that Roush Fenway equipment. He had a good run here last year. Roush Fenway had a pretty solid car last year. So if you're looking for somebody maybe as a bit of a flyer to throw in your garage that might have a sneaky good day, I'm keying in on Chris Buescher because last year in some mediocre equipment, he had a pretty solid finish. That equipment that he moved into was pretty good last year at this track. So I wouldn't be surprised if we get a surprise, pretty solid finish from Chris Buescher here. So he's getting my garage place this week. But I'm pretty confident about those 5 in the starting lineup this week. And I feel like those 5 are definitely going to be up there and contending for the win this week.
Yeah, I like that Chris Buescher pick. I like it. It's a bit of an oddball, it's a curveball, I guess you could say.
Another one to throw out is after the success last week, Cole Custer, he also won the Xfinity race here last year.
That's true.
Led most of the laps. Christopher Bell was right up there with him. So if you're looking,
I'd say the rookies could be pretty strong this weekend.
Yeah,
so
if you're looking for another one, Cole Custer and maybe Christopher Bell as well could be a couple decent flyers if you're looking to save some usages. But I'm definitely feeling the JGR and Ganassi cars this week.
Yeah, I think the numbers don't lie. Hopefully that they align.
Numbers didn't lie last week.
Hopefully they stick with it this week and make us look like even more geniuses. So
you already know if Chris Buescher has a good day, I'm tweeting the hell out of it.
Yeah. Do you got a winner pick then for this weekend? We can kind of wrap up.
Yes. Well, I went with Kyle Busch last week and wasn't necessarily up there a whole bunch. I think that this week is going to be a bit of a redemption for the 19 team, and Martin Truex Jr. has another classic Martin Truex Jr. race. I'm feeling the 19 car up front this weekend at Kentucky.
That was my pick.
Nice. I like it.
I think Truex is going to win this weekend.
No harm in agreeing on it. I mean, he's basically been class of the field or solid top 10 at this track. And I just feel like, especially after these last few weeks where they have had some issues, the frustration obviously builds up quickly for somebody like Martin Truex Jr. I'm expecting a feisty, aggressive, and dominant Martin Truex Jr. this week.
Yeah, I agree. I think if he gets a top 5 starting position, watch out because that 19 car will be really, really fast this week. And that's my pick as well. Like, I don't know that anything can really deter me on that. I mean, I think Kyle will have a solid day. He's up there in terms of winner contention, but he hasn't won all season. So I'm not going to pick him until he wins something. So I don't want to jinx him or anything.
Hey,
so
I like it.
I need to see some more speed out of that 18 car. It really let me down at Indy. So I think that the 19 car is probably your best bet going into the weekend. And obviously with no practice speeds or anything like that, it's really hard to judge. It's just basically what you unload with. So that kind of concludes our Kentucky preview. Some quick notes from the NASCAR side, and then we'll move on to the other motorsports. And news broke this morning from Adam Stern that Watkins Glen may not be on the schedule this season after all. Such a heartbreaker. We talked about it in our show on Thursday and in our Q&A, and Watkins Glen was in both of our top 5 lists in terms of best tracks, and it'd be a real damn shame if we didn't get to see that track this season, especially since it's had some great racing and some great finishes the past couple of seasons, and I'm sure Chase Elliott's pretty upset with that decision.
Yeah.
it does seem it's possible that Daytona may have their road course for the Cup Series this season, which would be a first. Obviously, no one has ever really ran on it except for the people that have run the Rolex 24, Kyle Busch being the most recent in terms of running the road course. I think it'd be pretty interesting to see the Cup Series on the banked and the road course element at Daytona.
That's the roval to the extreme. You've got a big bank corner there and a decent straight, getting some speed, but also some fun racing in the infield as well. If they do end up doing it, I'm pretty excited for that.
Yeah, I just wish that it wasn't Watkins Glen coming off the schedule to do it.
Yeah,
that's just a real bummer. Just obviously with the COVID-19 restrictions in the state of New York, so it's just really tough to really go against, I guess, what the state can really say. So
yeah, and it just makes sense from that perspective. You don't want to try and push anything, leave anything too late, and you do have some pretty decent options around the United States for some other road courses that they could potentially run to replace it. So yeah, if there is a track that's going to replace the Watkins Glen race, I'm very okay trying out the Daytona road course.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best thing that I've heard is that like they're wanting to try something new. They're not replacing it with like another race that's already on the schedule, that they're willing to take that risk and try something different. And that would be probably another Roval kind of race where the inaugural Roval, because it's all unexpected. No one knows what
first turn.
No one knows how to set up
Daytona.
Oh God!
Oh my!
It'd probably be like a 30-lap race or something, but it's like it is what it is.
That first turn is scary.
I'd imagine that they would probably put it like almost like a back-to-back weekend in Daytona, because I'm thinking Daytona will end the regular season still.
I hope so.
Probably play plan. So they could probably do, if they wanted to keep the travel down, they bring down a Daytona road course car and then a Daytona super speedway car. But obviously that's to be determined.
That would be wild. It could be back-to-back road course and then super speedway. Oh man, that would be great.
Yeah, NASCAR would gain some pretty good viewership, I'd say, if they were to do that. So it's going to be interesting to see how that storyline develops. So that kind of broke this morning from Adam Stern, obviously one of the best in the business in terms of bringing the latest and greatest to us. So that was kind of that news. And then Bubba Wallace gets a personal Beats sponsorship by Dr. Dre. So just to wear the headphones around, I guess it doesn't seem like it's going to be any sponsorship on the car per se, but it's good to see that, a big brand like that is backing Bubba Wallace. They were going to wait to announce the sponsorship later this week, but Mr. President Donald Trump wrote a tweet that took a shot at Bubba Wallace, saying that he should apologize to his fellow NASCAR drivers and to the officials and everybody in the sport for standing by him in what was, he calls it a hoax. The whole new situation that we've discussed in plenty. So obviously some
typical Trump
pretty
tweet.
Strong words there from the president. And obviously some viewers, including us, who probably disagree with what he said on a very harsh...
Disagree is a bit of a light term.
I'm trying to be polite here. So the drivers and NASCAR stood up for Bubba Wallace, saying that they're happy to have him in the sport. Obviously, I think it's very difficult. I think this is probably the most difficult situation that NASCAR has probably been put in, that the president who was gave the command to start engines for the Daytona 500 kind of goes against one of their own kind of drivers. So it's a tough situation to kind of discuss. And Tyler Reddick was probably the most vocal driver in terms of showing his support for Bubba Wallace. He wrote a tweet that was basically saying that he supported him and will be just fine without your support, Mr. Trump, basically is what he kind of said. So and a couple hours after that, unfortunately, he deleted the tweet. And then Jenna Fryer, another journalist for NASCAR, reported that it was internally that they made him delete the tweet. And it seems like Richard Childress was the person that was kind of the man behind that. So kind of an unfortunate situation there for NASCAR. Just can't seem to, when something positive happens, another negative thing comes along. And especially on a global stage. But obviously it got national attention once again. Bubba Wallace just seems to get in the national spotlight. Hopefully he will get into that for getting top 10 finishes and getting credit for that instead of getting political hate thrown at him. So obviously a bit of a rough situation there, Kyle.
Yeah, and it's just another unfortunate situation because Bubba Wallace hasn't done anything to deserve any of this hate and whatnot being thrown his way. And it's just somebody who isn't educated on the situation throwing their mouth because that's what they do. And in terms of Tyler Reddick, I mean, great on him for speaking up and not necessarily being the most polite about it, being pretty blunt about his feelings and whatnot, which is good because another kind of overlooked aspect of it is not only is it NASCAR rallying around Bubba Wallace, but all of the drivers in the sport itself are being able to kind of shed the stereotype that exists within NASCAR, which we've seen in the fan base, but basically the polar opposite with the drivers that are actually in the sport. So it's great to see. And for Tyler Reddick, I hope he gets some actually good equipment next year and gets the hell out of RCR so he doesn't have to delete his tweets because, the NRA-sponsored team, I'm not surprised, had their driver delete a tweet in regards to Donald Trump. Yeah,
it's unfortunate for Reddick because I feel like it's so difficult in today's society to say what you actually feel is your opinion.
I don't know what his contract is like with RCR. I don't know if it's even possible that he could be in better equipment next year, but I got to say,
48 car is rumored.
The 48 car is there. And if Brad Keselowski isn't available, because it seems like that is their number one option in terms of targeting that veteran driver, you could do a hell of a lot worse than getting Tyler Reddick in that team. And just imagine the future dominance of that team featuring Chase Elliott, Alex Bowman, Tyler Reddick, and William Byron. Like that's quite the four-headed monster there going ahead into the future. But again, that's just speculation and whatnot. But I'm sure that doesn't do a lot of wonders for RCR in trying to keep Tyler Reddick into the future. Because if you look at a similar situation that's gone on in the past, obviously not this season, but Kyle Larson staying at Chip Ganassi Racing for so long despite interest from some bigger teams. And that was because Ganassi gave him the opportunity, stood by him for so long and supported him. And it seems like it's going to be a very different situation in the next either few months or few years with Tyler Reddick, given that, yes, they did give him the opportunity to come over to the Xfinity car, give him some cup starts, and then give him the cup ride. But censoring your driver for simply supporting another driver because you're a terrible sponsor and that you support, I think that's all that really needs to be said about it.
Yeah, it's a touchy subject, and obviously we wish we didn't have to talk about it. It's something that needed to just be discussed quickly, and it's just unfortunate. It is what it is with NASCAR. It just seems like. So on a bit more positive news, Bubba Wallace is leading the All-Star fan vote. I think everybody's going to vote for Bubba Wallace. I feel bad for the drivers that are having to compete against him in that vote. I don't think
Boyer has the barstool bump though, so I don't know.
That's true.
He's definitely
he's second in voting.
So I would be stunned if Bubba Wallace isn't in the All-Star race.
I think everybody would love to see it. I think he'd put on a great show, especially at Bristol, where he can compete.
Let's not roll out the fact that he might just go up and win the damn thing.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. He could win the Bristol.
Let's not forget, it's at Bristol now, which is one of Bubba Wallace's best tracks as well. So,
it's going to be interesting to see how they handle the, the pre-race, like the drivers to work their way in, because how much are they going to actually bang up their cars
a lot
in the first race? Because if they get in, they have these same cars, so that'll be all discussed.
Hey, I'm sorry. Do you forget what happened at last year's Open? The Bubba Wallace pushing Daniel Suarez down into the end. Like, let's not forget, there's been some really hard racing in the Opens in the past, and at Bristol Motor Speedway, I have a feeling it's going to increase, not decrease. But hey, I could be very wrong on that one. But when there's a chance at $1 million on the line, I feel like these guys are going to be doing anything and everything to get into that race.
It's going to be very entertaining, and we will have
a
preview on that next week. So it'll be a good one to discuss. And I think that kind of just wraps up the Cup Series news. We can kind of quickly just touch on the Xfinity Series, I'd say, while we
Awesome
keep on the
race.
NASCAR side.
Love the road course.
First road course race for the Xfinity Series at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Great race. I was in it the entire time. I was I was locked in. It was a great thing to watch, and not as many passing opportunities as I kind of expected there, and there wasn't as many excursions off the track. Like not too many mistakes.
Right.
I feel like that practice really did help the drivers trying to get there. If they didn't have that practice, I think we would have seen even more different race. So
because we saw in the practices how many did happen.
Yeah, exactly. So that was definitely beneficial to all the drivers, and I think that probably put on a better race. Then I don't want to see drivers going off track every damn turn. I think it was good to see some really solid battles, especially down the stretch with that final restart there with
10 laps is some of the best.
Cindric and Briscoe. Oh man, those three put on a show out there. I didn't really take Briscoe as much of a road course racer, but then I remembered that he won the inaugural Roval. So that kind of gets forgotten, I think. The Xfinity Series inaugural race, which was really good because the Cup race was so good at the inaugural race. But Briscoe is an understated road course driver, and he pulled off a great dive bomb after losing the lead to Allmendinger and Cindric. He comes back right at him, and he puts a 3-wide dive bomb
right down into turn one.
And gets them both, and he didn't look back. And the Indiana boy wins for the 5th time this season. This guy is on a roll.
He's making a case.
It just shows you how good the 3 were last year. That Briscoe was kind of like that 4th guy, but he was but he's so good this year. It's really, really cool to see that he's showing potential, and that SHR swept the weekend, I guess, for Indianapolis for the Cup Series. So and for NASCAR. So good to see Briscoe.
Eventually do a silly season episode, his name is going to be included.
Yeah, definitely. It just depends on what ride it opens up and what the possibilities can be later on the season. So we'll probably do that, honestly, relatively soon, I guess, because most of the news gets kind of rumored or spread out there by September.
We're about to enter that silly season territory. Formula One has just kind of jumped the gun, and they've got it all done out of the way.
They took advantage of the pandemic and just said, let's just get it
they were like,
with.
hey, you know what? We got some contracts. Let's figure it out. And it feels like half the grid is already figured out for next year.
And another one got announced today. So I guess that kind of does the Xfinity Series. It's not too much
there wasn't
to dissect.
Too much.
But it was really, really good racing. You just have to watch it to really enjoy it.
Appreciate it. Yep.
Good race. That's definitely a
Canadian
success.
boy
Thumbs
Alex
up.
LeBay getting another top 10, finishing 8th, getting closer and closer to that top 12 position. I don't know if he'll quite get there, baby. But hey, Alex LeBay, you love to see it.
Yeah, good to see the Canadian kid going down there. Good old Canadian boy going down there and getting some solid runs in the Xfinity Series. So we can kind of move on, I guess, to F1 because they return for the first time since 2019. It's been a long time since we've seen
the
F1 drivers competing in an actual race. They had the preseason testing, and then that's about as far as they got. So
they gave us a treat too. Oh man!
Thankfully, Austria is such a great track to return to, and it definitely seemed like a season opener because of the reliability issues.
Oh yeah.
So we'll get into that. I guess we can kind of quickly touch on it because it is the breaking news story of the day in terms of F1. Fernando Alonso is expected to be announced. The announcement is expected to be made tomorrow to return to F1 in the Renault, a seat that is being left by Daniel Ricciardo, going to McLaren, and then Carlos Sainz leaving McLaren to go to Ferrari, replacing Sebastian Vettel. So Vettel seems to be out of F1 with this news for next season. I don't know where he's going to fit into any team's real plans, but that's huge news because when Fernando Alonso left a couple of seasons ago, we were like, man, will he ever come back? There was rumors like, man, he's going to go to IndyCar. That seems like to be the next step in his career. He's going to go try and win that Indy 500 and maybe try a full-time season in the IndyCar series. But Formula One, there's a seat open at his old team in Renault, and I guess he just couldn't say no, and he's going to be coming back. Sky Sports reported it this morning, and obviously some big news there to see a former world champion back on the grid, replacing most likely Sebastian Vettel, another world time champion. So obviously very excited to see Fernando Alonso back on the F1 grid. He always, whether he's running good or he's running bad, he always makes it a good show with his radio chatter with jam engines or something. So it'll be very interesting to see how he does. GP2 engine, GP2. So, Kyle, what are your thoughts on the big news?
I mean, in terms of all the available drivers, I think that this makes a lot of sense for Renault. Just because with Esteban Ocon, you kind of need a second veteran driver to really help with your development, because this is a works team that is not performing like a works team, and they need significant improvement to get to the top of the grid. And somebody like Fernando Alonso can come in and really help with that. And so it was kind of what they hoped for in Daniel Ricciardo, and it just hasn't worked at all. And I feel like this is a much better move in the short term, and probably in the long term as well, than promoting one of their younger drivers that are running in F2 or something like that, maybe a little bit earlier than they would need to. But it just makes sense from everybody's perspective. Fernando Alonso can get back into a full-time ride with a fairly competitive car. For Renault, they bring back their former star. They bring in somebody that can really help with the development of the car and help with the development of Esteban Ocon as well. So it just makes sense for everybody there. And just seeing Fernando Alonso back on the grid is just going to be phenomenal. I can't wait for that.
Yeah, I hope they go back to the blue and yellow livery
please.
for next. That would be insane if they just I
do like the black and yellow. Fernando. I'm a Dortmund fan, so I kind of have to like that scheme. But hey, if we can get that blue and yellow back, no complaints whatsoever from me.
Yeah, I'm so excited to see Fernando back on the grid, and I think it's going to be, add a little bit more personality to a very personable grid. I'd say this is a pretty young
shot
lineup
up these last few years.
Yeah, I think it's probably the best Formula One I've ever seen, really, in terms of personalities and the amount of people that are, bringing entertainment to the sport. And with this season, it seems like it's going to be all up in the air. It's all to play for,
except for maybe one team.
Except for maybe one team. But 3rd to 20th, it's open.
Oh boy.
It seems to be pretty open. So a great race at Austria. We can kind of move on to the GP. Moving on to just quickly on the qualifying, quite an exciting weekend, I'll say. Vettel misses out on Q3 in the Ferrari. Ferrari not showing really any speed throughout the entire weekend until the race, I guess you could say, with one particular driver. But Vettel started P11, not showing too much pace, like I said. So, and they, after having the best engine last season, seems like they're losing a lot of time in the straights.
Not just Ferrari either. The Alfa Romeo and Haas did not look all.
Yeah, the entire Ferrari camp has totally bottled the engine this season. So GP2 engine, as Fernando would like to say. So Hamilton also received a grid penalty because of qualifying for failing to slow down for yellow flags because of his teammate Valtteri Bottas going off into the gravel, but he already had secured the pole basically anyways. Valtteri Bottas gets the pole for the Austrian GP after Hamilton looked maybe to be the fastest car in practice. It's up for debate. They seem to be pretty equal this weekend. It seems to be Bottas is one of his better tracks. Hamilton kind of struggles on this track for some reason. I'm not too sure why.
Yeah.
Bottas with a great lap. It was a very, very fine margin that he beat Hamilton, but it would all be for naught as Hamilton gets a 3-place grid penalty, dropping him back to 5th, allowing Verstappen, Albon, and Norris to move up.
Lando, let's go.
Very good positioning for track position, and obviously Lando Norris is the big story this weekend, and we'll get to him. And I just wanted to, and then also Red Bull launched an official review of Mercedes' DAS system. Didn't really anything come out of that, but the FIA deemed it legal. I mean, I don't know how much of an advantage it really has. It's obviously to be determined.
We don't know yet.
I just think the Mercedes is just so much more superior. I don't know if the DAS system really impacts it too much. I don't think that the teams, if they didn't have DAS, would be all over Mercedes, is what I'm trying to get at. So it's just a note that came out of Saturday that they launched an official protest, I guess, and nothing really came of it. So Racing Point also showed that their preseason testing speed was no fluke, as Stroll and Perez got top 10 qualifying spots. So a great weekend for the Pink Panthers on the qualifying on Saturday, and Perez would show that speed on the Sunday as well. And Bottas gets a good jump and gets a good jump on the start and sets sail. No contact on the first lap, kind of surprising.
Yeah, I was stunned about that.
Everybody was pretty clean.
Yeah. I was expecting like 3 punctures, a front wing somewhere in the gravel. Like, yeah, I was expecting something crazy.
You had expected the drivers to be,
it was very
aggressive.
clean first lap.
Yeah, and there was not too many incidents, I'd say, throughout the race. It was just mainly mechanical, and Verstappen.
Which makes sense.
Yeah,
for opening
it's just
round.
it usually happens at Australia too. It's usually that's the season opener. So
it's a roll of the dice usually.
Yeah, and Verstappen's luck with reliability is terrible once again to start the season, and he would have a mechanical failure on lap 11 very early on. He was going to get basically a for sure podium, it seemed. He had pretty good pace. He was obviously a little bit off the Mercedes, but I think this is one of his better tracks, and it's unfortunate for Verstappen, but he's got next weekend to come back and try and get that win or a podium finish that he probably deserved this weekend. And
for sure,
Ricciardo, Stroll, and Magnussen all suffer from mechanical or engine failures before the halfway mark of the race. So a bit of variety there, I guess you could say. I mean, unfortunate for Stroll that the Mercedes engine kind of let him down there. Then the Renault engine let him down, and then the Ferrari engine kind of let Magnussen down. So it was if you had an engine this weekend, it didn't really matter except the Mercedes basically car. But they had
it was basically 50-50 if you were going to finish the race or not.
Basically, one teammate finished and the other one didn't. Basically, is what happened. So it was kind of weird in that sense, and we'll move on a little bit later into the race as it kind of got stale there for a little bit, but it got really, really good later in the race.
Yeah, it did.
Vettel spins going for a dive bomb on his on the person that's replacing him next season, Carlos Sainz. So just very amateur move by Vettel. There was no gap for him to go. Yep. It was a weird move by Vettel, and it really took him out of contention for really anything. He got 1 point. He finished 10th. Kind of a really bad weekend if you're a Sebastian Vettel fan, and I was expecting maybe a little bit more of a performance boost out of him, just because of this maybe his last season in the sport, or maybe for a couple of seasons until a ride opens up for him to come back, because there's no top tier rides at all available for next season. They've basically all been confirmed. So it's tough to be a German fan and of Sebastian Vettel a little bit. He's got a soft spot in my heart. It's just painful to watch him do some stupid stuff. So rough day for Vettel. And then George Russell would bring out a safety car later on. Poor Russell. He does so well in the virtual GPs, and then
he did. He almost made it to Q2.
I know the Williams, I will say, looked a lot better than what we've seen in the previous 2 years.
Russell looked a lot better. I don't know about Latifi, but
Latifi. Hey, he finished the race. He finished
the race.
The Canadian boy. Our Canadians had a very good
I don't
weekend.
know if it's Latifi looking bad or if it's George Russell being that good. I feel like it may be more Russell just being that good and getting the max out of the car and kind of making Latifi look bad, but we'll see how it goes. Let's not forget his first ever.
It was his first race.
Yes.
So we'll give him a bit of a break there.
I'll give him
I just hope it's not the same season, same situation as last year where Latifi gets the 1 point and then Russell doesn't get any points.
Imagine?
And then like last year with Kubica getting the 1 point and Russell not getting any points after outperforming him all season. So hopefully Russell gets a point for that team.
There were a few times I cheered more than Kubica getting a point, I gotta say.
That's true. It was good to see him to get the point last season, and that was with about 20 laps to go. That safety car, which provided a lot of strategy for the cars that were behind Mercedes, as Hamilton had moved his way up to second from the grid penalty. It was just a Mercedes 1-2, and then Albon and I think a couple others. I think Leclerc pitted as well to get fresh tires there, which paid dividends for them. Unfortunately for Albon, it would not work out in the end for him.
Worked too well.
And then on that restart after the safety car, Raikkonen has one of the weirdest things I've ever seen. The tire just falls off the car, and Vettel's like right behind him. Yeah, it just kind of went straight. I was like, It was just really weird to, like, the camera just, you see yellow flags in the top in the leaderboard, and then you're just like, what's the yellow flags for? And then you just see Kimmy's just like kind of just sitting there in this car. He's like, well, boah.
It's a hobby.
Like, as you would say, boah, it's, I felt bad for Raikkonen. The Alfa Romeo didn't seem to have too much pace this weekend. So rough.
But Giovinazzi.
Yeah. He ended up getting points. So, I mean, it wasn't too difficult to get points, honestly, but it's just,
if you finish the race,
survival of the fittest.
You had like a 90% chance.
Exactly. And then there would be another safety car after the Raikkonen thing just to clean that all up. And then Albon had passed Norris on that restart and worked his way up to third with the soft tires. And he was looking like he could maybe come for the win. It was honestly just one lap, but that car was flying. So, and without DRS, he got to the outside of Hamilton. And as Albon would like to say, he's a sore loser. Hamilton gets into the right rear of Albon and sends him spinning into the gravel. Hamilton would get a 5-second time penalty, which would prove huge in the outcome of this race. Albon would later retire, did not get his first F1 podium, unfortunately. Rough day for Red Bull. No points this weekend.
Very disappointing.
After having a really strong qualifying. And, they seem to maybe be that second best team because Ferrari have kind of dipped off. So with every race mattering, this is a tough blow to start the season to get no points on probably one of their better racetracks, especially at the Red Bull Ring. So rough day there for Red Bull. It was a sensational move, though, by Albon. Like, I thought, like, it was such a great pass.
Awesome move.
He had his nose ahead of him. Like, it was like, oh, man, what a move to get around, the 6-time champion.
Gave Hamilton as much space as he could. Just Hamilton tried pinching him too much. And
I'm glad he got a penalty for it because it was well-deserved. It's frustrating.
I think it was simultaneously a bit of a racing incident, but also a penalty where it's Hamilton trying to pinch him to try and keep the position as long as he can, but at the same time, can't pinch him that much to the point where you literally make contact with him and ruin his race. So I definitely don't think that it was intentional or anything like that, but I do think that the penalty was deserved. Obviously doesn't mean anything for Albon, but the penalty was definitely deserved.
Yeah, I just felt bad for him. I mean, the guy is such a great,
bad for the guy.
Such a great guy. He deserves to get that podium, and I can't wait till he gets his first F1 podium. But we had a driver that did get his first F1 podium on Sunday, and what a frantic finish at the end. Leclerc with the fresh tires, racing his way up through the pack, showing that Ferrari does have pretty good speed when it's on fresher tires than everybody else. So he makes his way up to a net P2 because of Hamilton's penalty. Great weekend for Leclerc in terms of getting the result because the points are awarded on the Sunday, not on the Saturday, and that's what really matters. And he brought that Ferrari home. He said it was probably one of his best drives ever, and I could probably agree with that because with the way he lugged that Ferrari up there, it was pretty much a weekend that they could almost throw away until that moment in time. So great weekend for Leclerc. And Perez would also get a penalty for speeding in the pit lane, would become really late in the race. It just kind of came out of nowhere, and it was really impacted how everybody
see those kind of penalties. It happens all the time in NASCAR. You rarely see that in Formula One. And if there was a penalty, you would have thought that it would have been for an unsafe release, but no, it was actually speeding, which surprised me. And that impacted the final running order a bit as well.
Yeah, they had the McLarens, the Orange Beast coming up through there. Sainz and Norris had pretty good speed all day. Norris was the superior car this weekend, though.
Yes.
Maybe they're paying a bit more towards Norris because Sainz is leaving the team. Maybe you can make that argument a little bit. Norris is their driver of the future. That kid is really, really fast, and I don't think he had the results last year to show how much pace he really brought out in that car. So Perez got that penalty, took him out of podium contention, but that Pink Panther is definitely a force to be reckoned with for podiums this season. I'd say that they're going to get maybe one for sure, maybe multiple, considering
just wait till
what happens in a race.
The Monza.
Yeah, that's true. It's that could be a track that the Pink Panther really comes alive. And Danny Kvyat's tire basically explodes there late in the race. Yellow flags didn't really impact too much. He was in a points position, but that was mostly like with everybody left in the race. They ended up with 11 finishers. Latifi was the one guy missing out on points, unfortunately. So then we move on to the final 5 laps of the race. And I think Lando Norris probably put together the best 5 laps I've ever seen in Formula One that I've started watching. Like, it was so insane. Good. Like, that McLaren, from what it's gone from, to go from a back marker, basically qualifying
from
last,
GP2 engine to
going for podiums. It's
not just that, getting the fastest lap of the race.
Yeah. And with that, Norris was in P4. Hamilton had a 5.7 second lead over Norris after he had gotten past Perez. It was a great pass by Norris on Perez. And then they had to coach Norris when to use the overtake button, when to power up that engine to make sure that that thing came home. Because Mercedes was kind of struggling with reliability a little bit in the race. They mentioned some gearbox problems, but that ultimately that didn't really affect them. It was just Hamilton's penalty. Yeah, stay off the curves, and they're running all over the curves. It was hilarious. Yeah. So then we have Norris getting around Perez, like I mentioned, 5.7 seconds back with 3 laps to go, and he gets to 4.8 seconds within Hamilton for that 5-second penalty, moving him up to a podium position, and he gets it. His first F1 podium. Unbelievable. I was so happy for him.
So happy.
Norris is obviously, he's in top 2 drivers for me. I love Verstappen, and Norris is right there with him now. He's just such a great personality to have. He's young. What he's able to do in a race car is pretty impressive at his age. And Bottas wins the GP. Just kind of throw that out there. He dominated the whole race. Good on him. Maybe he could be in contention for a world championship this season with the lesser amount of races. Hamilton's going to have to be on his A game from here on out to try and beat Bottas. So that could be a storyline as the season unfolds. For sure. If Bottas continues with his strong start to the season like he usually does. But yeah, obviously some great racing there at the end. Norris, I'm so happy for the kid. I mean, it was incredible. He was so happy, but he didn't know if he should be happy because like they had to make sure that it was official.
Yeah.
I felt so. He was like, I don't know if I should celebrate or not, but it was.
Yeah, it wasn't confirmed yet, and it was just great. Awesome. Just such a natural reaction, and everything about Lando Norris is great. Not just for the sport, but for us and everything. It's impossible not to like the kid. So. It was great seeing him get such a great result in the first race of the season. And going ahead into next weekend, we're running it back.
Yeah, we're going to be going for a doubleheader here. We've got Austria back-to-back races to start the season, and I don't think I could really pick a better racetrack right now that's on the calendar that could supply that because the passing opportunities are great. I know Crofty and Brundle were kind of getting on that second DRS zone on the backstretch, but I'm fine with it. I think we need the 3 DRS because the 3 DRS zones because it is just gets that extra bit of passing. I'd rather see passing than everybody getting stuck behind each other. So it was great to hear Crofty say lights out and away we go again.
The best.
Just brings out some great memories. And, it just didn't feel right to not hear that so far in 2020. And now it feels like 2020 is starting to get a little bit more back to normalcy. So I guess that's kind of the F1 race. I mean, Leclerc, Bottas, and Norris are your podium finishers. Great weekend. I mean, you can kind of point out some notable finishers. Ocon gets in the points in his first race back in F1. But it was just basically if you survived and you didn't get any mechanical failures, you finished in the points. So we'll see if anything changes next week in terms of reliability, and seems that the teams have figured something out over there. They're kind of weak here. It's a normal race weekend for F1 compared to NASCAR as well. They have all their practice sessions. Difference. Yeah, so I think NASCAR is probably in that position where, like we've said, playoff time. I think they're trying to look to get at least one practice session and qualifying in just to try and get a bit more normalcy to a playoff system to determine a champion. But that's F1, man. I can't believe that it's back. I love that it's back. Yeah, I mean, I hate
never been happier to wake up at 8 a.m. on a Sunday. I can't imagine for you. Oh man,
I didn't wake up. I was out.
I respect that. That's a tough one to wake up for.
The problem is though, I got my notification from damn TSN because they've got racing and because it's the only sport really on right now in terms of live notifications. Bottas wins the Austrian GP. I'm like, oh my God, thanks for waking me up to this. So that was kind of unfortunate. So I watched the race, and obviously we both really enjoyed it. Great to have F1 back. So that kind of concludes the F1 kind of recap.
Now, before we move on, do we want to quickly hit on IndyCar, or do you want some little bit of news that just came out?
Is it good or bad news?
It's neither. It's schedule news for the Cup Series.
Okay, I think we should bring the viewers, the listeners,
here we go.
News as we are in. I don't even know what this is. Give me a second. Okay, yeah, you go for it.
The Cup schedule being floated around the industry is potentially coming out tomorrow from Jenna Fryer for August. August 8th and 9th, Michigan back-to-back. August 16th, Daytona Road Course. August 22nd and 23rd, Dover 1 and 2. And finishing on the 29th, the Saturday night, Daytona, of course, the triangle. I don't want to call it an oval because it's not. So, yeah, that's looking like what the Cup Series schedule is going to be for August.
I mean, the Michigan doubleheader makes a lot of sense to me. I don't like that track at all, but, I'd rather get it over with in the same weekend.
Same thing as Pocono.
Makes sense. I think it's a great track to do it. Dover makes sense as well.
Given
that kind of concludes the regular season, then, doesn't it?
Yeah, that would. Given the two double headers, I do like that they separated the Daytona races by a week, just so that it's not doubleheader. That would be a lot. But it's looking like there's going to be a lot of racing coming up in August with a lot of Saturday, Sundays, or 2 Saturday, Sundays, and then Sunday road course, and then the Saturday night under the lights to finish the regular season.
Yeah.
I got to say, given the tracks that they had at their disposal, I think that schedule makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to look at it because I'm on NASCAR's website right now just looking at what it would have been. It's obviously confirmed up to New Hampshire. So then they had Michigan, Watkins Glen, Dover, and then Daytona to kind of round out the season. So I think we were probably missing a couple races in there. That's why they're doing the double headers. So
we've got a handful to make up.
That makes sense. I think if they bump the Michigan races down to 150 laps kind of each for each race.
Yeah, definitely shorten them up.
Yeah, it sucks that Watkins Glen, like we've talked about.
I'm excited to check out that Daytona road course.
Yeah, and Dover, a doubleheader. It is what it is, I guess. Kind of got to get the two Dover races out of the way. Don't really
Dover's
have too many thoughts on.
Yeah,
it can be. I mean, hopefully they just shorten the races to maybe 250 laps per.
Yeah, if you're doing the double headers,
you just have to shorten them.
The shortened races makes too much sense. We saw with Pocono, it definitely improved the overall product because if both of those races were even 50 miles longer, it would have been much more of a grind. But given 325 and 350, I think it worked for Pocono, and I would imagine they do something similar for these two doubleheaders. But it looks like as of tomorrow, if it goes out on schedule, we'll have the rest of the regular season figured out. And by the sounds of things, they want to keep the playoffs the same. So as of tomorrow, we might know the rest of the NASCAR schedule.
That's true. It's going to be obviously a little bit later for our podcast, so we'll bring that news to you next week once they confirm the schedule. But I mean, for fantasy, that's kind of interesting too. Looking at your double headers because it's because the races can depend. You saw the Pocono race, one race people did well, the other race it's the opposite, right? It's going to be interesting to see how that kind of shakes out in terms of results down the playoffs, especially ending it at Daytona on a restrictor plate track. Could be very, very interesting between someone like Reddick and Jones.
I'm just waiting for that Stenhouse wild card in the final race.
Yeah,
I'm just waiting for it.
If there was I think that's what NASCAR's kind of hoping for with this.
And it's perfect for it.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, it kind of felt weird. We just didn't really mention it last week, but it was a bit different not having the Daytona, a Coke Zero 400 at Daytona on the July 4th weekend. But if they're going to switch with any track, Indianapolis is the right track to do it. So
absolutely, and we saw it in the ratings as well, 42%. That's a huge
jump in the ratings compared to last season. So I think this
Yeah.
past weekend in terms of racing was a huge success, both with the doubleheader with IndyCar and the Xfinity Series and the Cup Series being moved to the July 4th weekend. So I guess quickly on the IndyCar, we haven't really mentioned who won.
Yeah, we'll touch on IndyCar.
Scott Dixon. Scott Dixon wins the race. He starts the season off for 2-2.
Yep.
Yeah. Graham Rahal seemed to be in contention there for a bit, but the pit strategy just didn't quite work his way. He gets second place, and Pagenaud completes the podium places. So, it was not the greatest IndyCar race, I got to say.
Yeah.
Our
especially
picks didn't really perform
in comparison
well
to the rest of the races on the weekend.
Yeah. Yeah, it was probably the worst race, I guess you can say. If you're kind of rating them, I'd probably put that as the worst race, and then Formula One first, Xfinity race second, Cup race third, and the IndyCar race fourth. But just glad to have all three series back on at the same time. I think that's the huge positive we can take away from the weekend. And this seems to be a great string of races there for IndyCar. I think they have 5 races over the next 14 days or something. It's really insane, their schedule right now. So after coming a bit of a break there from Texas to the road course, now they go on a pretty intense schedule
fast,
here.
Yeah. And a shout out to Rinus VK picking up a top 5 as a rookie at the Indy Grand Prix. That's pretty huge for him, and pretty good results, especially given how much the rookies struggled in the first race at Texas.
Yeah, the Aero McLaren cars seem to have really good pace. They just didn't quite get the finishes that they needed. Too bad for them. I think they've done a pretty decent job coming in this season to IndyCar for their first time. So I think they're forced to be reckoned with maybe for a win this season. So I guess that's kind of all the news and notes that we have for this week. It's been quite the week in terms of news. It's been awesome to dissect it all. And we move on to Kentucky next weekend for the Cup Series. Xfinity has 2 races at Kentucky this next weekend. And we've got the Austrian GP, I guess, whatever they're calling it, different race.
It's
Syrian Pirelli GP or whatever.
Yeah, it's something weird, but hey, it's Austria 2.0.
Exactly. And we're IndyCar next week. I didn't really check
that out. I don't remember.
Let me just check.
Professionalism. Let's go.
They're at the Rev Group GP race. Where is this? Road America.
Ooh, okay.
Road America for a doubleheader on the 11th and 12th.
Nice. Yeah. So again, lots of racing this weekend. Yeah. It's coming, and it's coming fast. And
we wouldn't have it any other way.
Oh yeah. Hey, if we had to go a couple months without any, I'm going to take as much racing as we can get right now. And so it's pretty good. I'm excited for it. So should be some interesting racing. Cup Series, we'll see how that goes at Kentucky. That's another track that's been kind of hit or miss recently. I'm expecting Austria to be pretty wild again, just given what happened this past weekend and everybody having a second go around, which we've really never seen in Formula One before. And then obviously Road America is a pretty interesting track as well. So should be a fascinating weekend of racing coming up here.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll be back here next week to break it all down for you guys. So we thank you for watching, whether that's on Spotify or via the YouTube channel. We appreciate your guys' support. And with that, I think that kind of concludes this week's episode. So I've been Lucas Wacker. He's been Kyle Cushman, and we will talk to you next week after an exciting week of racing.